Across continents, across centuries, across cultures that never met, humans have told remarkably similar stories, built similar symbols, asked the same impossible questions. Welcome to Between Worlds. Let's explore where history, belief, and human imagination meet. When someone dies in a traditional Jewish household, the first thing the family does, before the food arrives, before the condolence calls, before almost anything else, is cover the mirrors. The reason given varies depending on who you ask. Some say it's so the mourners won't be distracted from grief by their own appearance. Some say it's so the soul of the dead person isn't trapped in the glass. Some say it's so the angel of death, still lingering in the house, can't use the mirror to take someone else. Three different explanations, but they share one assumption so deep it goes unexamined: that the mirror is not simply a reflective surface, that something lives in it, or passes through it, or is captured by it, that the mirror is a threshold. This assumption appears in virtually every culture that has ever made mirrors, and humans have been making mirrors for at least 8,000 years. The question worth asking is not whether the superstition is true. The question is why the same superstition keeps being invented independently by people who have never met. The first mirrors were pools of still water. For most of human history, seeing your own face was a rare event. You couldn't glance at yourself by walking past the shop window. There were no cameras, no photographs, no bathroom mirrors. You might go days or even weeks without seeing your own reflection at all. The moment itself carried weight. It wasn't routine, it was an encounter. Before polished metal, before silvered glass, the only way a human being could see their own face was to look into water that wasn't moving. This is, when you think about it, a strange and specific experience. You look down into a surface that you know is water, that you know is shallow, and something looks back at you from what appears to be a depth that isn't there. Your reflection occupies a space that doesn't exist. It is you, but reversed. It moves when you move, but it is always slightly wrong. The mirror image is not how others see you, and on some level, the brain registers this. The face in the water is familiar but not quite right. It is you as you have never actually seen yourself. For most of human history, this was the only version of your own face you ever encountered. And into this experience, every culture poured meaning. Narcissus in the Greek myth falls in love with his reflection and wastes away staring at it. The story is usually read as a warning about vanity, but the original myth is stranger than that. Narcissus doesn't know it's his reflection. He thinks there is another person in the water. He reaches for them and they disappear. He can never touch what he loves most because what he loves is not real. The myth is about the unbridgeable gap between the self you see and the self that exists. The face in the water is not you, it is a representation of you. And the tragedy is that the representation is the only version of yourself you can ever directly observe. In Chinese tradition, mirrors are among the most powerful protective objects in existence. The Bagua mirror, an octagonal mirror hung above doorways, deflects negative energy and evil spirits. The logic is explicit. Demons, when they see their own reflection, are frightened by what they see and flee. The mirror turns their own nature back on them. In European vampire mythology, the vampire casts no reflection. This is usually explained as evidence that vampires have no soul. But the older explanation is more interesting. The mirror, in medieval European belief, reflected not the body but the soul. To have no reflection was not just to be soulless, it was to be something that existed outside the category of people entirely. The vampire has no self to reflect. It is appetite without identity. In Slavic tradition, mirrors in a house where someone has died must be covered because the soul, newly released from the body, is confused and wandering. If it sees its reflection, it might mistake the mirror for a door and become trapped in the glass. The mirror is a false exit, a room that looks like the world but isn't. In Aztec tradition, the god Tezcatlipoca carried a smoking obsidian mirror in which he could see everything happening in the world. He used it to reveal hidden truths, to spy on gods and humans, to show people visions of their own destiny. His name means smoking mirror. The mirror here is omniscient, the ability to see everything, including what is hidden. What connects all these traditions across cultures that had no contact with each other is a single consistent belief. The mirror does not merely show, it reveals, it captures, it connects the visible world to something behind it. Notice what none of these traditions describe mirror as: furniture, decoration, convenience. Across cultures, mirrors are almost always treated as active objects, things that can reveal, protect, deceive, or remember. Very few technologies have accumulated such remarkably similar symbolism across human history. And the question worth sitting with is whether this is superstition or whether it is a mythological encoding of something genuinely true about the psychology of self perception. Here is the genuinely strange part. Humans are among the relatively small number of species that appear capable of recognizing themselves in mirrors. Great apes, dolphins, elephants, possibly magpies. The list is short. The ability to look into a mirror and understand that the reflection is you, that the image is not another creature, not a threat, not a companion, but a representation of your own self, requires a cognitive capacity called self awareness, a sense of self stable enough to be recognized from the outside. When a human child first recognizes themselves in a mirror, which happens at around 18 months, something shifts in their development. They have, for the first time, an exterior view of themselves, a perspective on themselves from outside themselves. This is the moment, developmental psychologists believe, when self consciousness begins. They call this the mirror self recognition test. A small mark is secretly placed on a child's forehead. If, on seeing the reflection, the child reaches for their own forehead rather than the mirror, they have understood something profound: that the image isn't another child, it's themselves. It's one of the earliest measurable signs that the mind has begun constructing a stable identity. The mirror doesn't just reflect the self, it creates the conditions for the self to exist as an object of its own perception, which means every superstition, every myth, every tradition that treats the mirror as something more than glass, as a portal, a trap, a truth teller, a threshold, may be encoding a genuine psychological insight. The mirror is powerful. It is the technology through which humans first learn to see themselves as others see them. It is where the self splits into the self that experiences and the self that observes. The reflection in the mirror is not you, it is the story you tell about yourself. And like all stories, it can be wrong, it can be incomplete, it can show you something you don't want to see. No wonder we cover them when someone dies. No wonder we still feel in some atavistic part of ourselves that something looks back. Modern neuroscience has complicated the mirror even further. We now know that the version of ourselves we experience internally is not the same version we see externally. The brain is constantly constructing a model of who we are. The mirror confronts us with a competing model, a version assembled from appearance rather than experience, which may explain why people often feel a subtle shock when seeing themselves in photographs, recordings, or unexpected reflections. The face we recognize from the inside and the face the world sees are not quite the same thing. This may also explain why mirrors have become symbols of honesty. We speak of taking a long, hard look at ourselves. We ask whether someone can look themselves in the mirror. Even our language assumes the mirror reveals character rather than appearance. Somewhere deep in human culture, reflection stopped meaning glass. It became a metaphor for self-examination itself. There is a psychological experiment called the mirror meditation. You sit in front of a mirror, alone, in low light, and you look at your own face for 10 minutes without looking away. Most people report significant discomfort within the first 2 minutes. By 5 minutes, many report that their face begins to look strange, unfamiliar, distorted, like someone else's. Some report seeing their face change. Some report feeling observed. Some report a sense of the face in the mirror becoming more real than the face they inhabit. The researchers who developed this experiment describe it as a confrontation with the gap between the self as experienced from inside and the self as it appears from the outside. The mirror shows you the exterior self, and after long enough, the exterior self starts looking back. Perhaps that is why mirrors became magical. Not because they open into another world, but because they reveal something stranger. The fact that every human being spends their entire life trying to understand a person they can never fully see from the outside themselves. The object itself was never the point. The object was a way of talking about something larger, a fear, a belief, a part of being human that is difficult to describe directly. And that may be why these stories survive, because long after the original meaning is forgotten, the question remains: why do humans keep seeing themselves in things? Thank you for joining me between worlds. Until next time, stay curious.